I'd seen all kinds of nonsense in my 20 years owning Big Rock Ranch, but never someone in Lululemon leggings and $300 sneakers cutting clean through a barbed wire fence with garden shears just to walk her dog. I was repairing the north pasture when I spotted her. Blonde bob bouncing, oversized sunglasses glued to her face. She was bent over like a cartoon bandit, snipping at my fence like she had a vendetta against cattle enclosures. I blinked, thought maybe the sun had cooked my brain. Nope. She straightened up, yanked her fluffy white Pomeranian through the gap she'd made, and strutted onto my property like she owned the whole damn state of Texas. I rode up slow on Bandit, my chestnut quarter horse. He snorted like even he didn't believe what we were seeing. "Excuse me, ma'am," I called, tipping my hat. "You lost." She gave me a once-over and smirked. "No, I'm from the HOA board, and I'm exercising my civil right to use the greenbelt." "Greenbelt?" I echoed, glancing around at my cattle pasture, cow pies, and a very confused longhorn named Judy sniffing her Pomeranian. "This is a ranch, lady. It's adjacent to the community perimeter," she said, pulling out a laminated HOA map like she was deploying a weapon. Page 12, paragraph 6. Homeowners may utilize nearby natural terrain for recreational use. "That's not terrain," I said, dismounting. "That's my pasture, with real animals. That one weighs a ton and could yeet your purse dog to Pluto." She scoffed, flipped her bangs, and marched deeper in. The dog yipped as Judy took an alarming interest in it. "I'm within my rights," she yelled over her shoulder. I looked down at my freshly severed fence and whistled low. Now, folks out here might be laid back, but cutting someone's fence? That's about as welcome as peeing in their lemonade. It's trespassing, vandalism, and depending on what wanders through the hole, could get you sued for $250,000 in livestock loss. I took pictures. Fence, shears, her dog sniffing Judy's behind. And then I called the sheriff. Lucky for me, Sheriff Hank Simmons was old school. Literally, he still rode a horse when patrolling rural areas. Claimed it made him more approachable. Folks just said he liked the view. "Be there in 10, he said. "Is this the HOA lady who complained about your rooster crowing too loud?" "Yep." "Oh, this gonna be fun." Meanwhile, Karen was now trying to do yoga in the pasture. The dog had tangled itself in a tumbleweed, and Judy was eyeing it like it might be edible. My patience was fraying like my barbed wire. 10 minutes later, sure enough, Sheriff Simmons appeared on horseback, Stetson low, sunglasses on, chewing a toothpick like Clint Eastwood. Karen froze mid-sun salutation. "Ma'am," the sheriff said calmly, "are you aware you're trespassing on private land?" Her face went from smug to shell-shocked in 0.2 seconds. "This is common property," she stammered. Sheriff Simmons raised a brow. "Ma'am, I've lived in this town 42 years. Ain't nothing common about Big Rock Ranch except the manure." Karen's jaw dropped. You can't arrest me. I'm the vice president of the HOA." "Lady," he said, "you're about one broken nail away from a misdemeanor." I leaned on the saddle horn, grinning. "Want me to patch that fence before your dog ends up on a longhorn rodeo ride?" Her face went pale as a saltine. You'd think after being confronted by a horseback sheriff on private property, most people would slink away and count their blessings. Not Karen. The next morning, I woke up to a bright orange violation notice stapled to my gatepost. I didn't even know the HOA had authority beyond the subdivision, but Karen clearly thought she had manifest destinied her way into my acreage. It read, Infraction Notice. Property in violation of HOA Landscaping and Accessibility Code. Fence does not match community aesthetic. Presence of livestock deters neighborly walking paths. Rooster noise exceeds decibel limits. Immediate compliance expected. Fines pending. I stared at it in disbelief. First, the only people who lived past that point were cows and a couple rattlesnakes. Second, that fence had been there since my granddad dug the first post in 1964. Third, How do you find a rancher for having livestock? Accessibility code? I muttered. Lady, you're about to make yourself unavailable real fast. I grabbed the notice, walked inside, and dialed Sheriff Simmons. He answered with a snort. She serious? She left her clipboard. You want fingerprints? Tempting, he said. But let's not play all our cards yet. She wants a war, huh? Karen had escalated. All right. Over the next few days, she doubled down. She called the county, tried to report me for running an unlicensed livestock operation, claimed my cows were aggressive and obstructing a neighborhood nature trail. She even filed a formal HOA complaint about my barn paint color, which, for the record, is barn red. But the real kicker came on Thursday. That's when she marched back onto my property with two HOA board members, poor souls who looked like they'd been dragged there under threat of gluten-free bake sale exile. They were armed with clipboards, measuring tape, and what I assume was a decibel meter for my rooster, Cluck Norris. I walked out onto the porch, coffee in hand, watching them take photos of my barn like they were with CSI, Farm Edition. You folks need help? I asked. We're conducting an inspection, Karen said, chin high. This property is under community review. Funny, I don't recall joining the community. You fall within HOA's influence radius. Section 4.12b. That section was written by people who've never seen a cow up close, I replied. And unless y'all brought permits or a court order, you're trespassing again. Karen's nostrils flared so wide I thought she might inhale a fence post. I'll have you know, she hissed, our attorneys are very interested in your noncompliance. Good, I said, smiling, because mine's very interested in the hole you cut in my fence. Oh, and the part where your dog harassed my livestock. That's agricultural harassment, by the way. State law. One of the board members looked pale. We didn't mean to harass. Too late, I said. I've got photos, video, and Sheriff Simmons backing me. You keep pushing, Karen, and I'll make sure this whole county knows you messed with the wrong ranch. Karen didn't flinch. Then I guess we'll let the law decide. She turned, dog yapping, clipboard flapping, her board lackeys trailing behind like stunned chickens. I watched them leave, then walked out to check the fence again. That's when I saw the tire tracks. Fresh, narrow ones just off the south gate, where I rarely check. I followed them. They ran about 20 feet into the pasture and stopped, right at a newly flattened patch of my field. Next to a small pile of fertilizer? Nope. A bag of weed killer. Half empty. Right next to my vegetable beds. Now, I'm not the suspicious type by nature. You grow up on a ranch, you learn not to jump at every shadow unless it moos, buzzes, or slithers. But when I found that half-empty bag of weed killer dumped right next to my vegetable garden, I knew it wasn't an accident. That stuff was potent, industrial grade. The kind ranchers used for invasive brush, not anything you'd ever let near food crops. It was enough to scorch the earth for a year if you weren't careful. And the fresh tire tracks? They were the same size as the HOA golf carts. Only one person I knew who'd be petty and gutsy enough to pull that stunt in broad daylight. Karen. I bent down, gloved up, and took some pictures. Bag, tracks, proximity to the garden, all of it. Then I dug out the corner of the bag with my knife and slipped it into a Ziploc. Sheriff Simmons was going to love this one. I called him up. You're telling me she dumped poison on your land now, he said, voice tight. Sure looks that way. I ain't eaten a tomato yet this summer, and now I know why. I'll be right over. He rolled in 20 minutes later, this time in his squad car, though I could see his horse, Dusty, tethered to the trailer behind. Probably figured we'd need some dramatic flair. He examined everything with that no-nonsense look only older lawmen can pull off. Took his own pictures, then squinted at the label on the bag. She's crossed a line, he muttered. Vandalism is one thing. But if that stuff seeps into your groundwater or gets near your livestock. I know, I said. It ain't just trespass anymore. This is sabotage. And just like that, it wasn't funny anymore. I'd laughed off her clipboard crusade, her yoga in the pasture, the citations about my roosters, unlicensed crowing. But this was personal. Sheriff Simmons opened his notebook. You want to press charges? I want her off my land. I want her fined, cuffed, and paraded in front of every cow she insulted. He chuckled. Well, now that's a mental picture. Later that afternoon, he paid Karen a visit. I didn't go with him, but I heard about it through the town grapevine, which moves faster than a tumbleweed in a windstorm. Apparently, Karen tried to claim she was spraying for invasive grass and didn't realize she crossed property lines. She might have gotten away with that except she'd posted a photo on her Nextdoor account earlier that morning, captioned, trying to make the ranch a little more HOA friendly. Yeah, she documented the crime herself. Simmons printed the post out and handed it to me with a grin. This woman's dumber than a post-hole digger in January. Now the county was involved. Environmental impact report. Soil testing. All the bells and whistles. Karen didn't know it yet, but she was sitting on a legal landmine. Still, she hadn't backed off. 2 days later, I found a hand-delivered letter on my porch. No envelope, just folded printer paper, thick perfume smell, and typed in Comic Sans because of course it was. To the owner of Big Rock Ranch. Due to your non-cooperation with the HOA Beautification Initiative and your continued hostility, we are filing for formal community action against your property. You will receive an HOA hearing date shortly. Sincerely, Karen Belbridge, HOA Vice President, Lifestyle Coordinator, and Community Aesthetic Chair. Community Aesthetic Chair, I muttered. Is that even a real thing? Sheriff Simmons had one word, loony. But I had another idea. If she wanted a showdown, fine. But this time, I wasn't just going to defend the ranch. I was going to turn the tables. I made a few calls, printed a few things, and then called Simmons again. Hey, Hank, I said, you still got that ceremonial deputy badge and hat? Sure do. Why? Because I think it's time the town threw a little surprise party. On horseback. When I said surprise party, I meant it literally. The day before the so-called HOA disciplinary hearing, I loaded up the pickup, saddled Roscoe, and drove down to the county fairgrounds. That's where the sheriff and I met with a handful of local ranchers, deputies, and even the mayor who I'd tipped off about Karen's shenanigans. Turned out she wasn't just annoying me. She'd been sending violation notices to anyone with a chicken coop, non-regulation mailbox, or this is relay lawn gnome in non-neutral colors. I've had enough, said Old Man Wilkins. She said my windmill was hostile architecture. Mine too, added Millie Grace, a goat breeder. She tried to find me for naming my goat HORN. We had ourselves a posse now. And a plan. The next morning, Karen rolled into the HOA clubhouse in her white BMW with pink paw print decals, oblivious to the thunder that was about to hit. She strutted inside in her beige pantsuit, purse yapping from under her arm, probably her purse dog, Muffin, who wore bows more expensive than my boots. Inside, she prepped the hearing room like a courtroom. Clipboard, stacks of evidence, even a little podium with her nameplate on it, Karen Belbridge, Community Aesthetic Chair. She expected me to come alone. Maybe with a lawyer, maybe with a tail between my legs. What she got was a full-on mounted entrance. At 10 a.m. sharp, the clubhouse doors swung open and in came me, on Roscoe, followed by Sheriff Simmons, the mayor on a borrowed pony, and 6 local ranchers in their Sunday boots and hats. Roscoe let out a snort like thunder. Karen's jaw hit the linoleum. What? What is this? This is a hearing, she gasped, backing into her little podium. You can't bring livestock indoors. I ain't livestock, Karen, I said, tipping my hat. I'm the defendant. And we figured if you're going to keep violating the land, we'd bring the land to you. The mayor dismounted with all the grace of a man not used to saddles. I've seen enough, he declared. Karen, your behavior is officially under review. We've received environmental complaints, abuse of power reports, and now attempted poisoning. Karen's face turned the color of unpasteurized milk. That's slander, she shrieked. You're all just jealous of my commitment to standards. Simmons held up the weed killer bag. Got your fingerprints. Got your Nexter post. Got your dog hair caught in the fence you cut. You want to keep going? Karen opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again like a fish on dry land. Then the board members, yes, the same one she dragged to my ranch, stood up slowly. We'd like to issue a motion, one said, to suspend Karen from all HOA responsibilities pending investigation. I second that, the other added, adjusting his glasses. Karen screamed. You're all backwards. You don't understand suburbia. This is supposed to be a sanctuary of order. I patted Roscoe's neck and looked her square in the eye. We had order, Karen, before you cut my fence, poisoned my land, and tried to slap a fine on a rooster. The mayor stepped forward with a rolled-up parchment. We also brought this, he said. An official motion signed by the community to dissolve the HOA if this kind of abuse continues. You've got one chance to step down peacefully. Karen trembled. Her lips puckered like she'd bitten a lemon made of shame. You'll regret this, she hissed. All of you. Then, in the most dramatic flounce I've ever seen, she spun on her orthopedic heels and stormed out. But not before Roscoe let out a single, perfectly timed fart in her direction. Darn horse has a sense of humor. For a few glorious days, it was peaceful. No Karen patrols. No polite reminders duct taped to my gate. Just me, the livestock, and the sweet sound of silence broken only by cows mooing and birds living their best lives. But peace don't last long when you're dealing with someone who thinks the rules apply to everyone but herself. Late one night, I caught motion on the security cameras I'd installed after the whole weed killer incident. There she was, Karen, tiptoeing across my property in rhinestone sneakers and what looked like a trench coat? What is this? Midnight HOA spy games. She crept up to my barn with a small red gas can. That's when my heart dropped. Oh no, she didn't. I was out the door in 30 seconds, shotgun in hand, Roscoe trailing behind me like a sleepy old sidekick. I didn't aim it, just held it, because with someone like Karen, sometimes all it takes is the sight of consequences. Evening, Karen, I called out into the dark. She froze like a deer in LED lights. Slowly turned, holding the gas can behind her like it was invisible. I was just checking for code violations. In a trench coat, at 1:30 a.m., with gasoline. Plant food, she blurted. Roscoe snorted, clearly offended by her stupidity. Sheriff Simmons arrived less than 10 minutes later, roused by my call and the smell of Karen's perfume wafting through the county. He took one look at the gas can, then at her shoes, and sighed like a man tired of explaining gravity to a brick. I warned you, he said, and now you've escalated from petty crimes to attempted arson. Karen screamed again, something between a banshee and a stressed-out goose. I was trying to protect the community. From barns? I asked. Or from fresh air and freedom? Simmons cuffed her on the spot. Karen's dog, Muffin, barked once from her purse like it agreed with the arrest. But the real kicker? The security camera had everything. Her sneaking, mumbling to herself, trying to light a piece of newspaper, even cussing out my horse. I handed the footage to the sheriff. The local news picked it up the next day. HOA vice president arrested for attempted arson and ongoing ranch dispute. My phone lit up like Christmas. Neighbors, townsfolk, even folks from a few counties over sent me messages of support. Someone even started selling t-shirts with a cartoon of Roscoe kicking down the HOA sign. The HOA board disbanded a week later. Too much liability, they said. Karen? She got slapped with community service, probation, and mandatory therapy for anger-related rural aggression. I offered to let her work off her hours cleaning out horse stalls. She politely declined. Now, my fence is fixed stronger than ever. Sheriff Simmons still stops by for coffee and pie. The mayor even offered to make me neighborhood ambassador, which I kindly turned down on account of it sounding way too HO-ish. As for Karen, she moved out 6 weeks later. Rumor has it she's now terrorizing a gated retirement community 2 counties over complaining about how the squirrels are too unkempt. And me? I sit on my porch most evenings, boots up, hat low, watching Roscoe graze near the sunset. Sometimes he lifts his tail in the direction of the fence line, just in case Karen's ghost is still watching. And every now and then, I whisper, "Don't mess with the ranch.